Hey everyone, it's Thursday morning, January 15th, and welcome back to Capital Markets Quickie. I'm your host, Endrit Sella, here to break down yesterday's market action in just 2 minutes. Quick note before we dive in. Today's episode is brought to you by AMF Capital Asset Management Frankfurt. Learn more about our funds and strategies at amf-capital.de. Alright, let's get started. Yesterday, U.S. stocks pulled back as investors hit the sell button on technology shares and big banks, keeping the start to earnings season pretty shaky. The Nasdaq Composite slid more than 1%, while the Standard & Poor's 500 dropped about 0.5%. Both indexes actually recovered from even deeper losses earlier in the session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped roughly 0.1%, extending a pullback that has taken Wall Street off recent record highs. Technology led the declines. Several mega-cap names moved lower, including Nvidia, even after the U.S. officially approved chip exports to China. Reports of potential future restrictions, however, kept investors cautious. Tesla, Broadcom, and Oracle also saw notable losses as pressure across the sector intensified. Over in financials, Bank of America and Wells Fargo reported strong quarterly results, driven by a surge in trading activity. But despite higher profits, both stocks fell. Citigroup also moved lower, adding to a gloomy earnings season tone that began earlier with a disappointing report from JP Chase. On the macro side, investors digested wholesale inflation data that followed a relatively mild consumer inflation reading. Taken together, this week's data suggests price pressures remain sticky. That strengthened expectations for interest rates to stay on hold in the near term, while still leaving room for 2 rate cuts later this year. Elsewhere, metals continued to soar. Gold and silver climbed to fresh record highs, with silver breaking above $90 for the first time ever. The rally has been fueled by rising geopolitical tensions and renewed attacks on the Federal Reserve, both centered around President Trump. And finally, markets were watching the Supreme Court, which once again declined to rule on a closely watched challenge to Trump's authority to impose tariffs. Trump has framed the case as a national security issue, warning that a ruling against him would have major consequences. Alright, that wraps up today's Capital Markets Quickie. Join me again tomorrow morning for more market updates. See you then.